I'm in Bravo Company, and Card was a member of Bravo Company. More specifically, Card was a member of my platoon.
Okay.
So that would be, outside of that, I've never hung out with him. We didn't communicate outside of drill or anything like that, sir.
And, sorry, he's also a firearms and grenade instructor, as I understand.
I believe the correct terminology is trainer, but yes,
Trainer, okay.
yes.
So was his role almost every weekend helping to train folks, or he had so many duties, it's only one of them?
So in the Army Reserve, just for some context, our mission is to train these West Point cadets.
Okay.
We don't go there, we go there in April for what they call a Sandhurst mission, and then we go there in July and August for the freshman year cadets. So that's the only time that we're actually training cadets. In the Army Reserve, we do practice our craft, so to speak, but it's largely a readiness thing. We're making sure that we're ready for any potential deployments, or our medical records are up to date, all of our required annual trainings are complete, and all those other things. So I would say during our monthly drills, yes, there were times where we were pitching classes to one another based on what we were going to do at West Point, but it's largely a readiness event.
The court reporter has to take down everything, so it's best not to respond to the
Okay.
answer.
He reported he was wearing a hearing aid around the beginning of the year, and that he had some complaints about that. Did you hear anything about him saying anything like that?
Yes, sir. I mean, I don't remember exactly, like word for word, but I can remember him speaking about him getting hearing aids, and I can remember, I think prior to him getting hearing aids, he had been denied getting them. I don't know what all that was about, but I can remember him talking about the hearing aids, yes. Yes, sir.
And in July, when he had those issues at the hotel, there was also mention of he was drinking. Was he drinking to the point of intoxication?
No, sir. I in fact, really not at all. And that was kind of when he first walked in, the first comment he made, I think I thought, well, maybe he's already had a couple beers. But as the day went on, I could tell, specifically from my law enforcement experience, that it was my opinion that he wasn't impaired on anything.
And when you were on the way to the hospital with him, because that was a command decision to have him evaluated, was he voicing that, I really don't need to go, I don't want to go, anything like that?
In the car ride, he didn't say a word. Prior to when I was behind the state police and they were speaking with him, he typically, when we're asking somebody to go to the hospital, whether it be, even in a protective custody situation, sometimes we will, we'll ask if they'll go voluntarily, just so we don't have to go that route. But I think that the New York State Police pitched that.
Okay.
And his response was just that, something along the lines of, wow, if it's command directed, I don't have a choice.
So in a way, in his mind, he was thinking involuntary in a way.
Yes, sir.
Okay. Also, when you had this incident where you got him the help he needed at the time in July, and then you heard later on about this whole incident with the soccer base and all that stuff, what was the first gut reaction? Did you think, like, I thought we got him help?
Yes, sir. I mean, initially, after going through an event like that at West Point, I would like to add one additional thing that it hasn't been my experience that soldiers in the reserve component are often command directed to go seek mental health. So this was something that I had never seen before. So leaving West Point, I actually felt really good about what we did and felt like we'd done more than most reserve units would, and perhaps associated that with the fact that a lot of our command staff are police officers, and we do have a unique ratio of civilian police officers in that unit. So, and that's not to pat ourselves on the back one bit, it's just to say that in my experience, I haven't seen anything like that before. So yes, to answer your question in short, I was surprised because I did think he had been
Again,
hospitalized.
don't interrupt the answer with a response.
And the last question is, you mentioned some of the opportunities to improve the response here, when the actual shooting was happening, the aftermath anyway. Have you, in your role as an Andrews County, have you ever done active shooter drills involving the state police and other jurisdictions? And what has the experience for those trainings been when you did it?
I have been a part of those trainings. Some of them were at the academy. And there are a couple, so as I'm sure the commission is aware, when you think of an active shooter, the first thing we think of, is a school. Mm-hmm. And that's, so been a part of like clearing hallways and things like that. And those are much easier responses because it's a much more methodical way to search as opposed to, well, is he in the woods? Is he here? Is he there? So yes, to answer your question, I have been a part of those trainings. Sometimes they're within just your own agency, and then other times they are with other agencies. There's two really kind of schools of thought when you think about an active shooter in a school. One being a lockdown, which you're probably familiar with, where law enforcement goes in and all the kids are locked down, and the other is it's not a relatively new program, but it's being implemented in more schools throughout the country, is the ALICE program. And I can't think off the top of my head what the acronym stands for, but it's basically, in layman's terms, is just, hey, if you're a kid and there's an open window and you can get out that window and run to the tree line, go. Like there's a multitude of different things that you can do in that response. So to answer your question, yes, training, we do training with that, those different types of things. So
thank you.
Any other questions? Yes,
Yes.
Paula.
You indicated that you conducted a Maine recycling search.
yes, ma'am.
And, excuse me, at the time you were told that all the vehicles at Maine Recycling had been searched.
Yes.
Who told you that?
I don't remember. There was a large group of people that were there helping. That's a large building. So there was multiple agencies there that assisted with that search. And I can't recall who had said that they'd been searched. I thought it was the chief of Lisbon who was on scene with us helping conduct that search, but I can't say that with absolute certainty.
And then when you returned to the satellite lot later that day, what was your purpose of going there?
Basically, we had a lot of, that day in Lisbon and Durham, we couldn't, I think I referenced in the, in my report that I had responded to a 911 hang-up call in Durham, and we thought he may have really been in there, given the association with Card's family being at the residence, and the press were like right on our tails, even on the way there. And then after even clearing that scene, they were blocking the road with cameras, and it was just a really unsettling feeling that we couldn't freely move without the county and respond to what we thought were a potential location of him without being followed by the press. So that was the satellite lot. It kind of sits back off Route 196. It was just kind of a way that we could get out, and we knew that that had potentially been an area that had been, or we knew that we were told that that was an area that had been searched. And interestingly enough, that satellite lot has a walking path that's parallel to the back of it, and that leads directly to the boat ramp where Card's vehicle was found.
So when you returned the second time, you didn't return to conduct another search?
No, ma'am, and in fact, I don't think we were just for your information, two patrol guys, even given, we do have rifles and things of that nature, wouldn't have been equipped to search a large lot of trucks. And we thought that it was based on what we were told that Maine Recycling had been searched. We thought that was inclusive of Maine Recycling because it is their property, and that it was more of a, kind of a benign place to just sit up and chat away from Route 196, ma'am.
Wait just a moment, well, Deborah, and then you.
I just have a couple of quick questions. What is your awareness of Robert Card's duties on the 3 yearly trips to West Point?
This year, I don't know what range he was assigned. We're assigned different ranges. Like this past year, I was assigned to the M320 range, which is really it's a grenade launcher range, where we're dealing with real high explosives. The previous year, I was assigned to the hand grenade range, where you're dealing with throwing practice rounds, but also real hand grenades. And again, this past year, I don't know what he was assigned to, but the previous year, I know that he was assigned to with me on the hand grenade range.
Okay.
And then previous to that, I'm not sure.
Thank you. And the body cam footage after the New York State Troopers were there revealed Mr. Card basically saying, they said, "Do you know why we're here?" Something to that effect. And he said, "They're afraid of me. They know what I'm capable of." Were you in the room when he said something to that effect?
I believe I was right behind the state troopers during that time. I did watch the video, which actually helped. I don't specifically remember him saying that, but there were a lot of different things going on at the time.
Well, my point in asking that was that true? Was there a concern about a fear of what he was capable of?
I mean, I think there was, people knew in the unit that he had firearms, but I'm not sure who even heard that comment. I don't know who was standing behind me when the state police were in the room. So, I mean, I guess there could potentially, of course, be a concern wherever there's somebody that's in possession of firearms coupled with a possible mental illness. There could be a concern. But I earlier when the commission had asked Sergeant Jondro about, would there have been a concern regarding thermal imaging scope, and so we're in an interesting spot in the state of Maine where there are still situations in the state of Maine being a hunter where, let's say for instance, night hunting coyote is allowed. So that is an instance where some people will use night vision to hunt coyotes, and Card was a hunter. So some of these other things come into play when you're looking at this with, a discerning eye when you hear about the things that he said or his behaviors. But it's that, like I mentioned earlier, that delicate balance of, at what point are we going to restrict somebody from having firearms, which, goes in line with the yellow flag law. So.
And what elements, if you're aware, because I know command directives for going to a mental health evaluation are rare, but are you aware of, do certain elements need to be satisfied in order to issue that command directive, or is that sort of at the discretion of the commander?
I couldn't honestly answer your question.
And just lastly, the reason I asked the previous question is I'm trying to figure out how, if Mr. Card says they're afraid of me because they know what I'm capable of, that could be a function of whatever mental illness process was going on at the time, or it could be a real reflection of his reserve fellow reservists having a real concern about what he's capable of. So that's why I asked the question.
So it may be a question better suited to be answered by someone that was more close with
Sure.
him, ma'am, but I wasn't even watching the video when he said they. I'm not, at this point, he's making comments about people talking about him that we could, we were able to say that's probably not happening. So I didn't know what he was even referring to, so
Thank you.
I hope that answers your question.
Shelby?
Thank you. I wanted to follow up on your comments about communication. Let me go back to New York. So after he was command directed to go to the hospital, he went with 4 of you, right, in the car?
There was 3, sir, and 4 including him.
Okay.
There was, actually, in the car was 4 including him, sir, and then we had Staff Sergeant Wainwright was either behind the New York State Police or directly behind us.
Okay, so there was the driver and then 2 watching the car,
Yes, sir.
and you kept eyes on him all the time
Yes, sir.
because you were concerned about his behavior
Yes, sir.
and his threat.
Yes, sir.
Okay, and you had how many state troopers behind you?
I believe there were 2, sir.
And then,
There could have been 3, I'm not sure, but I don't think it was any more than 1 or 2 cars.
so you had almost a caravan going to the hospital because of his threats.
Correct, and at the time, like I just said to the doctor, that at that time, I don't specifically recall him making that threat. Watching the video, I remember being there, but yes, based on his behavior, we certainly wanted to keep an eye on him, to include his behavior and posturing up with Staff Sergeant Reed the previous evening.
And then you knew he spent 2 weeks in the psychiatric facility, right?
Yes, sir.
And you knew he had guns.
Yes, sir.
Did you ever talk to Sheriff Murray about that?
No, sir.
Did you think that Sheriff Murray would want to know about this?
At that point, I believe First Sergeant Moat had communicated those things to the Saginaw County Sheriff's Office,
How do you know that?
based on information being provided down the chain of command.
Did Sergeant Moe tell you he relayed all this information to the Sheriff's Office?
At some point, yes, he did, sir.
When?
I don't recall.
Was it after September?
I don't recall that information, sir.
Do you know if this information was conveyed to the Sheriff's Office between early August and mid-September?
I can't answer that, sir. I don't know.
And Sergeant Wainwright is a sheriff as well.
Yeah, he's actually the sheriff of Oxford County, yes, sir.
Did you talk to him about the possibility of conveying this information to Sheriff Murray?
I did not, sir.
Why not?
I thought it was taken care of, like I earlier stated with First Sergeant Moat.
But you would agree it would be important for the Saginaw Sheriff's Office to know this information?
As it applies to their position, yes, I would agree with that. As it applies to possibly a yellow flag law, I would agree with that.
Thank
Yes, Jack.
Did the officer, the state trooper you spoke to for, you said 2 minutes at the Lewiston Police Department, is that a uniformed trooper or a non-uniform?
I believe it was, sir.
Uniform.
Yes, sir.
So you did not try to follow up with any major crimes unit investigators that night?
No, and like I stated earlier, that I was brought directly in there, and that was my opportunity to. And whenever there's a problem, I've always been told, be part of a solution. So based on my lines of communication, I did make a good faith effort to convey that information. And at some point, we were told that coming into the command post wasn't something that people weren't being allowed to just walk in and out of there. So I would say that I agree, like I stated previously, that I could have been more assertive on passing that information along. But in my own defense, I feel like being a deputy sheriff, also responsible for the safety of the community, looking at possible locations where he might be hiding at. I did do my due diligence in reporting that information on 2 separate occasions.
All right, turning to September now. You said in your opening statement that you knew about the File 6.
Yes, sir.
And the File 6 was issued, as I understand it, on Friday the 15th of September. Does that sound right?
I honestly don't know. I'd have to look at it, sir.
But weekend drill is a Saturday and a Sunday, correct?
Yes, sir, typically.
And when you arrived at the Saco Armory on Saturday, were you there after your fellow soldiers, or do you know what time you arrived?
I would imagine I typically always arrive at 07:30, so that's probably right when I got there, sir.
So that's based on routine, not a specific number?
Yes, sir.
Because there was nothing out of the ordinary about that weekend drill at that time.
Other than the information about the Saco police officers unit.
Which
No,
you
sir.
saw when you were driving in, you saw cruises around them.
I don't recall if I saw any cruisers, if they'd already left. I'm not entirely sure, sir.
What time is the drill supposed to begin?
07:30.
Okay, so at some point that day, did you find out about the File 6?
Yeah, I found out about it before arriving.
Oh, before you got there?
Yes, sir.
How?
I believe I covered this, but I'll recapture it. I arrived, I made contact with a Saco police officer after being informed there were cruisers outside of our drill hall. And that Saco
After
police
you were told
officer,
there were I'm sorry, I interrupted you. You were told there were cruisers and you followed up with a cadet, former cadet,
yes, sir.
and that was before you arrived.
Yes, sir.
Yes. And at some point, did you read the File 6?
Yes, sir.
So you know it described Robert Card as armed and dangerous and to be very careful in approaching it.
I'm not sure if those are the exact words. I know armed and dangerous was in there. Yes, sir.
And this was 2 months after he'd been command directed to have a mental health evaluation, so that was very concerning.
Yes, sir.
And did you find out at some point that Robert Card had apparently spoken to Captain Dreamer the night before and said he wasn't even coming?
No, sir.
Didn't know that.
No, sir.
And the night of October 25th, you were sufficiently concerned about Robert Card's behavior that you called Sergeant Reed and told him to leave his home
Yes, sir.
because he might be in danger as well,
Yes, sir.
because of his role in the July effort to get him into an evaluation.
As well as the incident the previous night where Card had evidently had a serious problem with Reed and altercation in the parking lot. Yes, sir.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Okay.
We're gonna have to take a break here in a moment. I'd like to finish up with Mr. Noyes before we do so.
Just educate me, when a civilian police department file 6, does the military MP sees that, that there's an issue like this, and you know that, what's the connection that there's a civilian police identified, there's risk? How would that get communicated to the military police to say, hey, you have an individual who may show up?
So I've never been a military police officer. I can speculate that so when a file 6 like this gets entered, it gets entered into NCIC. So if, for instance, if a police officer stopped Robert Card in Massachusetts for a traffic violation and he ran his driver's license, that would come up. I believe the military police have access to NCIC as well, so I would say that other than the unit's owned command making local military police aware, Other than that, it would be an NCIC hit, what we call a hit.
Thank you.
Anything further?
Chair,
If not-
could we get a copy of his statement?
If you don't mind, would you give a copy of that to
It's
us?
absolutely fine.
So is this a statement you prepared for the Army or just for?
No, that's.
Just for today, sir.
It was his testimony, which we already have in the court reporter, but the extent that we need it. Okay, in deference to the court reporter and the ASL interpreters, we'll take a 10-minute break and then we will return. 10 minutes. By this clock. What does that one mean?
I know, and I asked.
It was interesting. I was struck by how large it is. And, yeah, you didn't. Yeah, it was interesting. I mean, I got a better perspective. That it is small. Did you see the cameras? Yeah, it has to be. I mean, they're very well paved. I mean, or just, like a road, a little road. You can drive a car down if you want to easily. Oh, yeah, but we saw those. The one that led to the school and the other one that sort of led around to the back of the recycling. Maine recycling was also interesting because it was much more crowded than the overhead shots would suggest. I mean, in terms of other buildings in the area, and it's very industrial.
So back to
Yeah, so it was interesting.
for a while. Yeah, there hasn't really been. I'm just saying. Let me go get my computer.